Well, I don't think.
They don't walk up to you. They're getting pretty brave. They've been up in the roadway overnight, but it was the night of the last night. There's all kinds of footprints down by the bridge. But 2 or 3 days ago, two of them were picking up credit. You just don't see that. I guess they were on the floor picking up grit. The birds have that skin.
Good morning. It's pretty safe down there.
Yeah, because what's the nesting season? It's got one pair over the way to some but they always have their nest over that way.
These are geese. See the swans go back?
I've seen a couple of seated swans, a couple of pairs. They're certainly not like 5 or 6 years ago. And even last year, it seems to me there were a few dozen around here. Last couple of years, there have been a couple of dozen. But some people live like last year's there's hundreds of them over by this place. Was it about 5 years ago now? 6? I think around here, there were hundreds of them around here across about 2 weeks. Some you don't see. I've never seen one in my life, and that's a smooth structure. Yeah, I saw it before. It's just stuff that goes in. It doesn't mean much. You can't. Like it's what same size as a can. It's quite like a small.
I'll just say there's well, they didn't go in the morning.
You show up.
No, it didn't.
No.
Yeah.
You don't turn off the lights. You want to go ahead.
At the time we were yeah, it wasn't bad when I was, oh, it was raining. Yeah, because I had to be.
No, we've got a couple of those big metal container boxes. Pop on the driveway, you load it up, and take that away, store it down there, and bring it the second one, load it up. Pop it in the driveway there, so away goes. I hope so. No, we've got just one. whole box to see what it does. Yeah.
You're not taking fridge and stove and that's it. No. That's heavy.
Box got the fridge, stove, washer, dryer, microwave, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
We get there, so.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so we're so quick.
Yes.
So once a
Just
big
give me a minute.
End of the
end of it. Getting excited or just to move.
Maybe you'll say I couldn't care less. As long as I don't have to drive as far, and I'm farther away from the office, that works.
Is it as big a house or is it?
Well, no, we have like 4 level backs right now. It's huge. 1, 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. This one is 2 floors, no basement, hour and a half drive. Lot is 70 by 140. So fair side.
That's a good size.
Backs onto a baseball field and all that stuff.
That's a
And the
good.
street was just redone.
Yeah.
Or last fall. New pavement, new sidewalks, new. Every job somebody's got to do, right? And you and I.
No, it's fine, yeah. It's oh, wait. Yeah, it does.
You're not going to get to all that. Because you end up being the bad guy. Exactly what happened. It's too bad. There you go. Indirectly. Get it installed.
Welcome, and thank you for your patience. We've got a new system going. Internet was cutting out with us and on us, and now we have cable. Great. Welcome, good to see you here this morning. And we'll share our announcements with you first of all. So right here, we need people who will help make cupcakes on Saturday, April 13th. We're making cupcakes for the Wesley Urban Ministries dinner. We also need people who are willing to serve at that dinner. So if you could let us know if you're interested in either of those things. It says here for Sheffield, email Lynn, so you can let her know, and just to be sure we have enough people, because that will be next Sunday that we will be doing that.
Louise, what time do they need to be there on Sunday?
Okay, I have to double check that. I'm not gonna say right now. I will send out an email, because I have the information
This is for here. No, that's right.
for the baking.
Oh,
Yeah. It could be, I will double check that, so I'm not wrong about that. Okay. So, we have also upcoming is our Irish stew supper on Fridays, that's always a fun event, and hopefully we can make that. And the other Easter events are listed there. April 14th, Palm Sunday, the Wesley dinner. Thursday, April 18th is Monday, Thursday, which will continue a tradition that Sean Watson started, where we have kind of a meal, a light supper, and a discussion. So it's fun, it's really good, it's interactive, so you're invited to come to that as well. that's all the ones. I'll let you read all the other ones. Would you like to have an announcement?
So this is from the joint board meeting, which took place last Tuesday in Moncton. And everyone's asking what time is church going to be? So as the referendum produced a tie, in other words, the majority of both churches wanted a 9:30 service. So we will continue our present practice of rotating church times annually beginning in September. So come September, church at Sheffield will be at 9:30. Joint services in the summer will be at 10 o'clock, and then joint services from September to June will be at the time in the church that you're meeting. So if it's church is at 9:30 and it's a joint service in Sheffield, then church is at 9:30. If it's a joint service in Moncton, then the church will be 11, that's next September. So about 25 people were able to attend the conflict awareness meeting that took place last Tuesday as well. And although we were disappointed, the presenter came rather unprepared, and Louise frantically was trying to copy and collate handouts for everyone. We did learn that conflict doesn't need to be a fearful thing and can often lead to change and growth. We all react to conflict in different ways. Some collaborate, others compromise or accommodate. Some of us run away and avoid conflict, while others are competitive or forceful. So she presented to us 9 things that can lead to conflict in churches. If the role of the minister is unclear, when the minister is new to the congregation, and the role between the minister and the congregation isn't well sorted out, there can be unrealistic expectations on both sides. If the church structure or organization is unclear, then whose job is it? If the minister and the leadership styles don't match, for example, if one is authoritarian and the other is more interested in shared leadership. If the structure no longer fits the church size, so if the church is shrinking, volunteers can burn out. So let's take a look at, do you need to have as many committee members and committees, or do you need to adjust so you don't have conflict? A new minister arrives and rushes into changing things without really getting to know the congregation and the traditions. Or if there's poor communication, lack of communication destroys trust. Attitudes of church people towards conflict. A reasonable level is inevitable and potentially healthy. But the cost of covering it up rather than dealing with it can be great. Values and beliefs are another source of conflict. When you think about issues that have gone on with red laws recently. Or if money is used as a means of power and control, where people threaten to withdraw financial support because they're feeling that they're not being heard. So to address sources of conflict here at Sheffield, the board and the committees are reviewing and will bring suggested revisions to the congregation of our organizational structure, which was developed under the leadership when Brother Henry Collins was here. So we'll be planning something about learning about conflict resolution and about the ideas and tools that we as a congregation can use to manage conflict.
Thank you, Lynn. That was a good summary. It was about a 2-hour workshop, but you gave the high points of it for us, so thank you. I think we'll conclude our announcements there, and we'll acknowledge the land. We gather to worship on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. We live on this land as a result of a treaty made between the First Nations that were here before us and the settlers who came after. Together we are a treaty people. We honor the land and its people. And we light our Christ candle to represent the light of Christ that shines in the earth. And that's going back to Peace be with you. And I invite you to join in singing I See You. And our call to worship. Friends, we are holders of a common thread, the thread of priceless grace that winds creatively in and around us all. Often it feels golden, unbreakable. At other times it looks tarnished and frayed. To think the unthinkable point of shredding apart through antipathy, distrust of one another. We come therefore to be stilled, to listen deeply, to create room for another voice, another presence, beyond and before our own, to reorient and to lift us in perspective and apart, instilling lasting grace, peace, and hope that is spring. Lord, may we feel your presence in this place. May it be a place of sanctuary, a place where we feel your love and we experience hope. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And I invite you now to join in singing Be Thou My Vision. And last week we were having technical difficulties, so this week I do have the video I was meant to show you last week. It's mission and minute for mission video. Not sure why it's not working with sound. So we don't have Marty here. Sound there. Sound. Sound. So I'm just gonna get that.
It kind of works, I believe. It works in there.
Oh, okay, so you don't mind. So for you, for me, the love that is not just about the food, and it's not just about people being really hungry or having nowhere else to go, being homeless. There's all different kinds of people who come here, and they come here for just for camaraderie. People who volunteer here and work here know people's names when they come in the door. We have activities for people to do and resources if they need it. Stephen and I realized, okay, maybe people on the street, we're all just people, right? I've really gotten to know people and it opened my eyes a lot to even things like mental illness. They don't have access to services. I guess social issues here in Winnipeg as well, for everybody on Nova Scotia. When they're in a position that they can, believe me, I get more out of this than I can give. And so they need somewhere to go, visit with their friends, see their friends, and talk to people and make new friends. So this place is for them. The support of the Mission and Service Fund is pivotal to Oak Table's survival and success. We couldn't do it without knowing that we have that amount of law funding available to us. And what you witnessed there, if you've never been to Wesleyan Ministries to serve a meal, it would look very much like that. We'll do our prayer confession again. Listening, God, sometimes we pray confidently, trusting in your love. Sometimes we approach you fearfully, conscious of our own failure. Sometimes we are reluctant to pray, evading your call to us. Sometimes our prayer is a snatched moment in the hassle of activity. But always you hear us, and so we have confidence in your company, to know ourselves as you know us, and bring our confessions. Our assurance of part of this that God listens to our prayers and confessions, and there's nothing that God hears that God cannot accept, as we are His beloved, and His love for us, or her love for us, is unconditional. Amen. So for the responsive song, what's in red is the refrain that we sing, and Sharon, would you play the refrain for us once?
Which one is this for?
This song.
126 DJ. Oh.
Yeah, so I got it on the screen, so I think the red is what the part we sing, and if you play that for us once, it's the same as in the book.
8:50.
Yeah. And then we'll sing that in where it's lighter type, I say it where it's bolder than you say.
You know what it is?
That's fine, take your time.
My ordinance there. Second refrain, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Ready? I play the second refrain, right?
When God brought Zion's captives home, it seemed to us like a dream.
But then our mouths were full of laughter, and our tongues uttered shouts of joy.
Then they said among the nations, God has done great things for them.
Therefore we rejoice.
Restore our fortunes, O God, as streams refreshed and again.
Those who sow in tears shall reap with shouts of joy.
Those who go out weeping, carrying seed for sowing.
Shall come home with songs of joy, bringing in peace.
And I invite Bill to come forward for our gospel reading. Oh my gosh. Yeah. We're reading from that one.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
It's okay, read from that one, and then we'll
is from John chapter 12, verses 1 to 8. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus went to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, the man he had raised from death. He prepared his dinner for him there, which Mary helped serve. Lazarus was one of those who were sitting at the table with Jesus. Then Mary took a whole pint of very expensive perfume made of pure nard, poured it on Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The sweet smell of perfume filled the whole house. One of Jesus' disciples, Judas Iscariot, the one who would betray him, said, "Why wasn't this perfume sold for 300 silver coins and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He carried the money bag and would help himself from it. But Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Let her keep what she has for the day of my burial. You will always have poor people with you, but you will not always have me."
We're not doing an anthem today. Being a Christian is challenging. Following Jesus is not always easy. We're asked to make difficult choices in Jesus' name. The way isn't always clear, and the choices are not always obvious, and often there's more than one way to serve. In cartoons, when someone has a difficult choice to make, I'm thinking of Fred Flintstone, he would have a difficult choice to make, he'd try to decide what he was going to do. There would be an angel that would appear on one side of his head, and a devil that would appear on the other. An angel would whisper, really, this is the right thing to do, Fred. Be nice to Barney. Don't steal the lottery ticket from him or whatever it was he was planning to do. And the devil would be going, no, you really need that money. You should do that. It sometimes feels like we are struggling with those voices in our heads. Do the right thing. No, I don't have to do the right thing this time. We see that struggle played out in the house of Lazarus. Jesus is friends with Lazarus and his sisters. And you might remember that Jesus brought Lazarus back from the dead. Well, in this particular gospel reading, he's at the home of Lazarus again, visiting with Martha and Mary. And there has been a debate going on in this house as how best to honor Jesus. Martha prepares a lovely meal and serves it and creates a very welcoming home, whereas Mary prefers to honor Jesus and serve him by listening to his teaching, sitting near him. And today, she is honoring him by pouring some very, very expensive oil of nard, over his feet. Now this was very expensive. They were in Israel, and this oil came from a plant that grew in the Himalayan mountains in Tibet. So you can imagine what it took to even get it to Israel. It was worth 300 denarii, which was the equivalent of a laborer's yearly wage. So when Judas speaks up and says, "Why are you pouring that oil on Jesus' feet? We could have sold that oil and got money to feed the poor." I think, good question, Judas. Good question. Why isn't that money being given to the poor? And we face that question over and over again. The either or question. Either we help or we don't help. I kind of feel like that sometimes when I go shopping. Yesterday I was at Walmart, and when it came to buying my groceries, she said to me, "Would you like to donate $1 to the Red Cross?" And I'm like, "No." Well, I hope I said it nicer than that. But I feel terrible. I felt like a bit of a jerk saying no, like I don't care about people in trouble. But the reason I can say no is that I have decided, I make an intentional decision that I have certain charities that I give to and a certain amount that I give every year. So I'm quite comfortable saying no. It's not either help the Red Cross or help nobody. But it is a difficult decision to make. Now, when Mary pours this oil over Jesus' feet and Judas criticizes her, Jesus sticks up for Mary and he says, "We will always have the poor, but you will not always have me." That is a sad fact. I do believe he's right. We will always have the poor. People will always fall on hard times due to natural disaster, mental illness, war. There's a number of reasons why people become poor. The poor will always be with us. But I do believe that the poor do not always have to be hungry. And one of the charities that we support in this church is Canada Food Grains Bank. And their goal is impressive. It's bold, and I love it. Their goal is to have a world without hunger. Not reduce hunger by 10% by 2042. A world without hunger. They believe they can work towards that. They believe it can happen. That is bold faith. So where do they get that inspiration? Where do they get that bold faith? I think they get it from Jesus. And I think they get it from being near Jesus. And Mary got it by sitting at Jesus' feet. We can't sit at the feet of Jesus in the same way that Mary did, but we can sit with Jesus in the presence of Jesus. We can be near to Jesus in prayer, in nature, and in many different ways. It is not an either-or situation where you give to charity, but you don't spend time with God. I think the two are linked. You go to God as your source of inspiration and energy and motivation, and you take that love and then you give to the poor or people in need. I think that's what Jesus is pointing out to us in this story. He also stands up for Mary by saying she's saved this oil for my burial. Jesus knows that his time on earth will soon come to an end. He knows where this journey leads, and it leads to the cross. And I believe that Mary knows this too. On the travels with the disciples from day one, he has been giving them clues about where his mission will lead. And she knows this. And she lovingly anoints his feet with a very expensive and precious oil. I don't think she was wrong. We face these questions in church sometime, and it was a kind of a question that was at the heart of the birth of Protestant churches. The Reformation created the Protestant church, but it changed churches. The Protestant churches that were built were very plain. They did not have artwork in them. I mean, we've moved a bit away from that, but at the beginning, they were plain. And if they took over a Catholic church, they painted over with just whitewashed beautiful paintings. They got rid of statues and art, and they said, this is all extravagance. Spending the money on this, that money could have gone to the poor. We just want to worship God plainly with the Bible, with our bodies, sitting in plain church in plain pews. We don't need all the extras. Well, that's kind of, and then I guess the intention would be the less we spend on our building and on all this extravagance, we'll give it to the poor. Then I can kind of see that, but I don't know if you've ever gone to a beautiful cathedral. They have a lot of them in Europe, but they have them here too. In Hamilton, they have the great cathedral that you see from the 403. There's the beautiful cathedral in Guelph. When you go in a beautiful cathedral, it is an amazing experience. I remember going into Notre Dame in Paris, and as soon as I set my foot on the steps, I noticed that these old stone steps were worn. They had a dip in them because millions of people had stepped there. And through that, I felt a connection to the faith of my ancestors, the communion of saints, the great faith of all the people who had gone there before me. And then as soon as you step in the door, because the ceilings are really high and the architecture is so ornate, there's paintings on the ceilings and stained glass everywhere, your eyes are immediately drawn up heavenwards. And you feel the glory of God. And that's worth something. That is worth something. So I don't think it's right to say, feed the poor and ignore worshipful experiences. I think we need both. Because in worship, that's where we come and we feel near to God. What I would encourage you to do is find some way to do something extravagant for God, to worship God in some extravagant way. It could be what some people do is they create a little place in their home, just a little corner where they might set a Bible and a candle, maybe a lovely flower arrangement. It's a little worship space. And they go there and they sit there and pray. It's extravagant because it's something out of the ordinary. There's some people who kneeling down for a prayer may be a very powerful practice. That's something out of the ordinary. But the most important thing is to find a way to sit with Jesus. Yes, do the acts of charity, give to mission and service, help people, but sit with Jesus, because Jesus will fill your soul and will give you the strength you need to build the kingdom of God. Thanks be to God. Amen. Our next hymn is Said Judas to Mary, and it's from Voices United 129. They also have it. Oh, we can stop there. That's okay. Now we have our time of communion, and the communion liturgy is on the yellow bits. No, just when we're taking the elements. When Jesus sat at tables and broke bread with tax collectors, lawyers, rich elites, and poor peasants, he proclaimed that God's gracious love and abiding presence knew no bounds. Though these occasions of sharing food, women and men experienced God and shared in God's kingdom, a kingdom where all are welcome, worthy, and invited. Lives are transformed and empowered, and the fruits of God's gentle justice bloom throughout all creation.
All people, including each of us, are invited to share in this sacred meal of celebration, and we strengthen our presence of God in this place.
We remember that Jesus fed 5,000 hungry people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. At this miraculous meal, there was such an abundance of food that everyone ate until they were full, and there were even 12 baskets of food left over.
Holy God, we celebrate your abundant care and solidarity. We feel this meal.
We remember that Jesus joined a great banquet with Levi, the despised tax collector, and despite the complaints of some, Jesus welcomed Levi and invited him to repent and enjoy a fresh beginning at life.
Holy God, we celebrate your transformed presence. We feel this meal.
We remember that while sharing a meal with the Pharisees, Jesus welcomed a woman viewed as an outsider. As the woman anointed his feet with oil, Jesus declared her dignity before everyone at the meal.
Holy God, we celebrate your gracious inclusiveness. We feel this meal.
And I'm going to move over to the next page. It's lifting the elements. Lifting the elements. Gracious God, may this meal be for us an immense meal, where we encounter your presence in the sharing of this food, as the disciples did at the meal in Emmaus. May the sharing of this food also be a taste of your kingdom, Holy God, so we may be strengthened to be your joyful and hopeful disciples. And may we share in your kingdom of love, justice, and mutuality with those around us. Amen. We remember that on the night before he died, Jesus took bread, broke it, shared it with his friends, and said, "Eat this. This is my body broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me." He also took the cup and poured out the fruit of the vine. And he lifted his cup and he said to his friends, "When you drink from this cup, remember me. This is my blood poured out for you, the cup of the new covenant." The table is set. You are invited to share the elements all are welcome at the table. We'll start from this side. And Malcolm, you're helping. Holy God, bless each of us and the meal we share, so we may be open to your abiding blessing, nourished by your gracious love and strengthened by your resurrection power. Amazing God, thank you for your presence in this meal. We also thank you for giving us a taste of your kingdom in this meal. Please use this food to strengthen us to be your joyful and hopeful resurrection community, sharing and experiencing your kingdom of love, justice, and mutuality. Flow through us, healing God. Amen. And I don't know if I've said this before, but the word kingdom is intentional. It's not a mistake to put in the G. I'm hearing more and more kingdom. I also hear kingdom too. But when they say kingdom, you're focusing on the group as us being all kin together, all brothers and sisters. So just puts a little bit of a different emphasis on the kingdom of God. Now is a time of offering. We invite you to give as you are able. Give in hope and in faith, knowing that God has given you much. Dearest Lord our God, we are also blessed in the world around us. We seek to care for creation as you care so lovingly for us. Accept these gifts and those of our hearts to continue living your way in the world. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. Let us pray. Creator God, we are grateful for creation. We are grateful for your Son, Jesus, who came to show us what your kingdom is like, who lived with us and was an example of your love, your kindness, your healing, and your forgiveness. At one time, he walked among us. He had friends. He lived like us. He ate like us. He worked like we did. And now we relate to him in a different way. We relate to him in spirit. We relate to him in the body of Christ. And we appeal to you, God, and we appeal to the living Christ to help us with life's challenges. We think of people who are in mourning, and we ask you, Lord, to help them. We think of the Mabbitt family whose funeral was held here yesterday. May you walk with them on their journey and bring them comfort. We think of the people in our congregation and in our families who are dealing with difficult diagnoses or changes in mobility or circumstance. And we ask you, Lord, to help them and help us to see where we are needed. Also help people to accept help that is needed. Lord, we raise to you in the silence of our hearts the causes and concerns that lay heavily upon them. Thank you, Lord, for hearing our prayers. And we sing to you the words that Jesus taught. Our closing hymn is Spirit, Open My Heart. Go into this week with an open heart, knowing that you are loved and sharing the extravagant love of God with others.
There's lunch downstairs for everybody, sandwiches and, red cheese and dip and so, welcome to the
United Church dessert.
Yeah, oh, grace. Yes, because we are having a lunch, I'll say grace. But when are we going to have the funeral meeting? Eat a quick bite and then eat? Okay. So let's say grace. We thank you, Lord, for the food that we are about to receive and for all that you provide for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Yes. Yes, you can do that. So if you're in the funeral committee, would you want to sit at one table and we easier to talk?
We need.
I didn't know about the
One.
Maybe they will help you count, yes. They will help you count.
Oh, yeah,
He knows what he's taking it all the so.
Then you move.
I think I should come to church more often.
You did fine, Sharon, thank you.
What is that?